In this episode of Locked On Capitals, the Washington Capitals signed another goaltender. We're going to talk about the play of Tom Wilson and Evgeny Kuznetsoz, and then the trade deadline. Did the Capitals do enough? We'll talk about all of that and more next on Locked On Capitals.
Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello, and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me. My name is Dan Homey, and I host Locked On Capitals. As always, this podcast is free and available on all platforms. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen or view of the day. All right, in this episode, we're going to talk about the Washington Capitals signing another goaltender. Yes, they have a knack for signing really great goaltenders, don't they? If you just look back over the history of this franchise, it seems like they've always had real solid netminders. And there's a reason to believe that this goaltender that they signed will be just as great. Then we will talk about the play of Evgeny Kuznetsov and Tom Wilson. They're on a goal-scoring rampage. And then in the final segment, we will talk about the Washington Capitals and did they do enough at the trade deadline? All right, so we're going to start off by talking about that. The Washington Capitals signing a new goaltender. Capitals reportedly signed Dartmouth goaltender Clay Stevenson after a very successful NCAA season. And like I say, the Washington Capitals always just have a great knack, I guess is what I would say, for signing great goaltenders. And I think that Clay Stevenson is no exception to that. The Washington Capitals have signed college free agent goaltender Clay Stevenson. According to Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman, Stevenson, who played his junior hockey with the Quitholm Express, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, in the BCHL, just finished up his first season in the NCAA with Dartmouth. And, like I say, it's just they seem to always have their eyes to the future when they're looking at goaltending. And like I say, if you just look historically, there's never really been a period in the Washington Capitals history that I can recall and just say, man, they could really use some help in net, or they always have someone in the pipeline, I guess I should say. So if the number one or two person on the team isn't doing well, they always have someone in Hershey, see Braden Holtby, see Zach Fucale, etc. Those are just recent examples. So according to the Athletic's Tarek El-Bashir, the team hosted Stevenson for a visit earlier this week. The Athletic's Rick Dewall reports that Stevenson chose the Caps over interest from the New York Rangers, Vancouver Canucks, and Seattle Kraken. So I think that just speaks volumes of the Washington Capitals and why they always get all this interest from these college players, these free agent players that want to come to the Washington Capitals. And I think if they look at the pedigree of the team, they've always, like I said, they've had solid goaltending and they have a pedigree for winning. So I think that is very attractive to these younger players. I mean, the Capitals won the Stanley Cup in 2018. And they always just seem to do really well. They'll make it to the playoffs. I don't remember the last time the Washington Capitals missed the playoffs altogether. It's been some time. In 23 games this season at the Division I level, Stevenson posted a 6-14-2 record with a 2.70 goals against average and a .922 save percentage. Dartmouth was a very bad team this season, as you can tell by his record, but Stevenson still managed to finish tied for third best save percentage in the ECAC conference. And I think that on paper, he seems like he's going to be an excellent goalie of the future. As you know, that rarely do these goalies make their transition from college right into the NHL. I guess there's always exceptions to that. If your team has nothing in net and you pick up someone like this, you might consider it. In Ivy League games, he led the conference in saves with 255, in saves per game, 28.33, while finishing second in save percentage, .934. This is all according to Russian Machine Never Breaks, always a wealth of knowledge on the Washington Capitals. And I hope that he's going to find a spot on this team, because if you take a look at what they have down in Hershey, on the Stingrays for Carolina, there is some talent down there. You have Phoenix Copley, Zach Fucale, there's Shepard. There's a couple names in there that I'm missing there. But I think that they have to look to the future. Phoenix Copley is getting older, as we've talked about before, and who knows how long these players will stick around with the Washington Capitals. Oftentimes, these players can get dealt to other teams. There's trades. As you remember, we lost Phoenix Copley briefly to the Blues and that whole Oshie deal thing. So I think it was just a good sign for the Capitals to pick him up, because you always need help in net. And even if you don't need that particular person right now, at some point you are going to need someone like that. So I think that they need that depth going forward, because, like I say, they have Samsonov, who you could say is, maybe a questionable number 2. And as I've said many times, I think that they should probably go with someone like Zach Fucale. I think that maybe they would be better served to go that route, but I don't know if they will ultimately end up doing that. I guess that remains to be seen. So just some big moves here. I mean, kind of unexpected moves that you don't really see the Capitals doing. I didn't really think that they were going to be active in signing people at this point of the season, but we'll take it. You got, like I say, you got to look to the future and see what you have out there, and you can never have enough netminders, as you can see, and it's been proven this season. Vitek Vanacek has played pretty much lights out all this season. I don't think there's any real question about Vitek being the number 1, but number 2, as I've talked about before, is a big question mark for the Washington Capitals. They have Ilya Samsonov and Zach Fucale as they make this push down the stretch toward the playoffs. It remains to be seen who that number 2 netminder will be. I think that they can't waste too much time with Ilya Samsonov. As I've mentioned before, his consistency is what's key. Oftentimes I'll have people say, well, Dan, you don't know what you're talking about. Look at Ilya played great last night. He had a shutout, or, he only allowed 1 goal. And to that, I would say you're correct. And that was a great game. But the issue with Ilya is stringing together those wins to put together some winning seasons. So if something happens to Vitek Vanacek, God forbid, that you have someone that can step in and play admirably. If you remember the season that they won the Stanley Cup, you pretty much had a 1A and 1B situation in Braden Holtby and Philip Grubauer. That is an ideal situation. Because if you want to reminisce and talk about that particular season, it was kind of a Cinderella season for the Washington Capitals. And Braden Holtby played well, but then he started to falter towards the end of the season. Then insert Philip Grubauer. Philip Grubauer kind of saved the Capitals, I got to say, because if Braden Holtby didn't get his act together like he did towards the end of the Stanley Cup run, would the Washington Capitals have won the Stanley Cup? That's a question I'm posing to you. I would say probably not. So that is a perfect example, if you ask me, of why you have to have a 1A and 1B situation. Or, I wouldn't say that Ilya Samsonov is a 1B even. I would say it's a number 1 and number 2 starter. I mean, there's not a lot of differentiation there, but if you're a Washington Capitals fan, you know what I'm talking about, where the lines were pretty blurred between Holtby and Grubauer, where there is quite a disparity between Vitek Vanacek and Ilya Samsonov. So, like I say, you can never have enough depth in net, and good on the Washington Capitals for being forward thinking and picking up a solid netminder. So after the break, we are going to talk about the great play of Tom Wilson and Evgeny Kuznetsoz. Yes, NHL listeners around the league, if you're not a Capitals fan, listen here. Tom Wilson is more than just a goon. I hear that all the time. People say, well, Tom Wilson, all he is a big goon. He's a fighter. They compare him to some old hockey movies that were out. Well, take a look at his goal scoring total. Look at his record between him and Ryan Reeves. Take a look at it. I posted it on Twitter. I mean, he is a legitimate goal scorer. He has a physical presence, yes, and there's not one of the other teams in the NHL that would not love to have Tom Wilson on your roster. But first, Built Bar. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolution, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right. Thanks to Built Bar, it almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're so good. These are going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, the Puffs included. They're low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They are better, and a typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Ouch. It's not, you don't need to break your New Year's resolution already. Stick with Built Bar. Go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low cal, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and the big one, 17 grams of protein. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Thank you, Built. All right. In this next segment, before we get to that, we are going to talk about Locked On Now. Locked On Now is our team of local experts. So if you're ever wondering what's going on around the NHL, you don't need to go to the NHL Network or ESPN or TSN, wherever you live. You can go to Locked On Now because our team of local experts are going to give you the lowdown on everything that is going on around the NHL. Check it out, Locked On Now. All right, in this segment, we are going to talk about the play, the kind of the transformation of Evgeny Kuznetsov. If you look back over time and you look at the seasons that he's had, you think to yourself, well, what happened with him? I mean, he was such a great goal scorer, and then he had kind of that one off season, but then he was able to turn it around. This season, he's had 22 goals already. Yes, Evgeny Kuznetsov, the player, the center for the Washington Capitals, oftentimes on the top line between Tom Wilson and Alex Ovechkin, or Ovechkin and Shiri, fill in the blank with the right wing in that scenario. But Evgeny Kuznetsov oftentimes is on the top line with Alex Ovechkin. Okay, sometimes it's Nick Backstrom. Don't want to fight with me here. But Evgeny Kuznetsov's play this year has been stellar. Now let's kind of look back and just look at some of your notes, if you have them, about how Evgeny Kuznetsov fared with the Washington Capitals last year. Some prominent NHL writers said that they should trade him. They should get rid of him. He had issues with COVID. He had some personal problems there. It's time to move on from Evgeny Kuznetsov. Most everyone on the Washington Capitals organization or their beat writers said, you got to move on from Evgeny Kuznetsov because, he's not the player that he once was. But if you look back on Evgeny Kuznetsov statistically, he had 22 goals this year. Do you think the Washington Capitals could afford to be without those 22 goals? Who could they have plugged and played into that lineup to fill that role where he's getting 22 goals? Go ahead. I'll give you some time to think about it. Evgeny Kuznetsov has played an integral role in this Washington Capitals team. Like I say, he had one off season out there, and people are ready to send him away. He's not the player he once was. So looking at it in 22-21 this season, he had 22 goals. And then last year, he had that one off season with 9. And that was the season, like I say, everyone's like, get him away. But before that, the 19-20 season, he had 19 goals. The 18-19 season, 21. The 17-18 series, 27. Do you see where I'm going here? I think that what happens here is that people have zero tolerance for any sort of failure. And Evgeny Kuznetsov, I think he would admit it himself, had an off season last year. But I don't think that, people should be ready to jump the gun just because someone had one bad off season. I think that most players out there have bad seasons from time to time. You just can't be parting with these players all the time because, like I say, unless you have someone that you can plug in there that is going to fill that kind of role, you just can't give up on him that easy. Not only that, but if Evgeny Kuznetsov has a special bond with the other Russians on the team, Alex Ovechkin, Orlov, Samsonov, etc. So I think that he's a leader. He's kind of a goofy guy, but he's kind of the comic relief, I also think, for the Washington Capitals. So you just can't be so quick pan players like Evgeny Kuznetsov. The other player, the pleasant surprise that gets a lot of grief, is Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson is playing lights out hockey this year. He has 19 goals this season and 25 assists. So if that is not proof positive that Tom Wilson is not just a goon, I don't know what is. One of the Capitals' few bright spots in their 5-2 loss to the St. Louis Blues on Tuesday night was forward Tom Wilson, who scored a goal and assisted on another to bring his season point total to 44. That tied his career high with 17 games left on Washington's schedule. Wilson, who made his first All-Star team this season, ranked third on the Capitals, like I said, in goals 19, fourth in assists 25, while giving head coach Peter Laviolette a constant presence on second line that's been a revolving door of forwards due to injuries this season. I think everybody saw the offensive upside, Laviolette said Wednesday on 106.7 The Fan Sport Junkies. He had years before I got here, but now you see him scoring even more. I think oftentimes when a player is younger and he's in a different role, I think when he came here first, it was more physically. He had skill, and it was more physically element that he brought to the team. He just keeps working on his game. And, he does have that physical presence, but I don't think the Capitals would have him any other way. If you take a look at the Rangers, for example, they pretty much assigned Ryan Reeves just so they could be ready for when they play teams like the Washington Capitals. Why? Because the Rangers were in rebuild mode. If you remember a couple of years ago, all their players, it wasn't working for the New York Rangers anymore. So they either traded away future picks or they traded away their roster. And they went young, and they went through a rebuild, about a year and a half rebuild. And they had some great goal scoring. They had some awesome goaltenders, but what they didn't have was that enforcer, that intimidator out there like Tom Wilson that says, you're not going to step on my goalie. You're not going to step up to my rookie. Because if you come after anyone on the Washington Capitals, there's one or two people that's going to be on your tail in a hurry, Tom Wilson or Garnet Hathaway. And there's not another team in the NHL that would not die to have someone like that on their team. So his goal scoring is just an added bonus to that whole equation. So you just can't look at Tom Wilson as, and I think that a lot of people like to hate him. It's kind of like that Tom Brady syndrome. There is not one NFL team that won't love to have Tom Brady on your team. The greatest of all time, 7 Super Bowls. Who would not want to have someone like that on their team? But people cast shade at Tom Brady all the time. So just to bring this back to Tom Wilson, he brings that big physical presence, 19 goals scored this season. Go ahead, take a look at the stat sheet for Ryan Reeves. I'll give you a second. It is not nearly as great as Tom Wilson's. So for each of the last 5 years, Wilson has tallied at least 30 points, including back-to-back seasons with at least 40 between 18-19 and 19-20. After being limited to a career-low 47 games in 20 and 21, he's put together a career year in his age 27 season while still providing a physical presence. Only Garnet Hathaway has more hits than Wilson's 186. For the Capitals, Garnet Hathaway has 200. You'd like to hope and think that a player that puts up a certain amount of points at age 24, 25, you hope that there is more, and there is more in 27 and 29. They're entering the prime of their career, Laviolette said. So I don't think that it surprises, but certainly an important player for us to regard to the element of toughness that he does bring to the game. Ability to create offense and to score has made him a really complete player. And I think that's well said by Peter Laviolette, and this is from NBC Sports. They wrote this article as a comprehensive review of Tom Wilson, and I think that it should be heard around the NHL that Tom Wilson is a legitimate goal scorer. He's not just this goon. Sure, like I say, he brings a physical presence, but the Washington Capitals would really have it no other way. All right, after the break, we are going to talk about the Washington Capitals. And did they do enough at the trade deadline? It remains to be seen. They're all in on the goaltenders that they have. But is that enough ultimately? I think that it's going to, like I say, in this stretch, you got two kind of what I would call easier games coming up this weekend. You got the Sabres on Friday and the Devils on Saturday, But then a bigger opponent on Monday. It's going to be against Carolina, who loves to bring a physical game. And who did I just talk about there? Tom Wilson, Garnet Hathaway. Those guys are going to have to be ready because that's what's coming up next. A physical game. And we'll talk about that after the break. But first, BetOnline, it's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs. Include live betting in your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, in this final segment, we are going to talk about the Washington Capitals. There's a lot of people out there saying the Capitals didn't do enough. Why didn't they get a goaltender? Well, if you remember what Brian McClellan said, he said that unless there's one person that's willing to come to this team, that they're going to kind of stay silent as far as picking up a netminder. And we all know who that goaltender is, Marc-Andre Fleury. Let's face it, it was a Hail Mary pass to think he was going to come to the Washington Capitals in the first place, considering his history with the Penguins and the Golden Knights after the Capitals trounced the Vegas Golden Knights in the 2018 Stanley Cup. Let's never forget. Let's take a moment and remember. All right, we're moving on. The Washington Capitals decided to stay silent in the netminding position. And if you looked at really who was available out there, I mean, just take a look at the list that was out there. It was Korpisalo, it was Quick. I did think that Georgiev would have been an upgrade over Samsonov, but there wasn't a lot of great goaltenders out there. So I think that they made the right move. They picked up some depth forwards, Johan Larsson and Marcus Johansson, and I think that that's going to give them the experience that they need in the forward position. Before that, it was just like a lot of younger players that they were plugging and playing in there. So as they wrote here about the Washington Capitals, they talked about did the Capitals do enough? Barring a major change, the Caps are likely to draw whichever teams finishes atop the Metro, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Pittsburgh Penguins, or the Rangers, or could also cross over and play the Atlantic Division champ, which seems to be the Florida Panthers. To lose at the moment, any of those opponents offer the Capitals a very tough test to try and win their first playoff series since 2018. And there certainly won't be any easy outs across the board. And the Panthers, a team that they were on the cusp, and I think they made the right decisions. They have Bobrovsky in net, and they picked up Claude Giroux. And that's a team that, historically, the Panthers are an interesting team. They're either really hot like they are this year, or they're cellar dwellers. And but the thing that's unfortunate about the Panthers, I would say, is that they never really seem to get a good draw at their games. I haven't watched one recently, but I remember it was earlier in the season and they're doing really well. And you looked at the arena, the stands, it was very sparsely filled, I got to say. So I don't know if with the Panthers, are they in the right location? Do they need to move them to a bigger city? I guess I will have to talk to one of the Locked On insiders on that. We'll talk about that with one of them next time, but reacquiring Johansson, who has the Capitals' first-round pick in 2009 and played 501 games for them before being traded to the New Jersey Devils in the summer of 2017 in order to help create salary cap space for Evgeny Kuznetsov's 8-year, $62.4 million contract. They hope his addition will bolster the power play depth and add some skill to the lineup as well. Certainly, Johansson's familiarity with the Capitals is also a plus for the team. And as you know, he has his fellow Swede in the form of Nick Backstrom. And Nick Backstrom said, he got kind of tipped off that Marcus Johansson was coming back, and good on him because they're two players that play really well. And I think they got kind of similar personalities. They're both kind of quieter guys. I think similar age as well. I think that Backstrom might be a little bit older, but I think it was a solid move. And they got him on the cheap because in both of those cases, I believe that their former team retained 50% of their salary, and that is some good bargain shopping by Brian McClellan. I played with Kuzi the last 2 years I was here, and it was great. Johansson said his first game back in Washington Tuesday, I think he had a lot of chemistry and obviously played with Ovi a lot too. Before that, with those two guys, you just carry on and play and do your best and work hard, and I think things will come by itself. As the sprint for the playoff begins, the Capitals stumble badly in a 5-2 loss to the Blues. That's the Washington Post from 3/22/22. And they had that where Marcus Johansson played on the top line for a while, and I think that was a sound decision. Give him some quality time with some quality players and see what he can do. And they didn't get the result that they wanted to, but that Blues team, we knew that they were going to be more than a handful, and they ended up being that. That was another team that brought a big physical game. So that was kind of difficult. There was grinding out there the entire night. They were checking people into the boards, kicking them into the benches. It was a tough game. Larsson, who was originally with the Minnesota Wild, second round pick in 2010, played a single game with them before being traded to the Buffalo Sabres for Jason Pominville in 2013, signed as a free agent with the Coyotes in 2020, and is checking forward, who could be called upon to neutralize the opposition of the postseason. So Johan Larsson and Marcus Johansson, the two big acquisitions that they picked up. And I do think it's enough because based on where they are in the standings, I don't know. I don't know if they have what it takes this season to win a Stanley Cup. I think that they might make it to the first or second round. I would love to be wrong about this, but just looking at the other teams out there, they talk about, the Capitals might have to play this team that's really hard or that team that's really hard. Well, yeah, that's the point. You're going to have to play all those teams in order to win the Stanley Cup. If it was going to be easy, there would be a lot more teams that were a lot poor winning the Stanley Cup. So you just have to hope that what you have on your roster is enough, either on your NHL roster or your AHL roster, to bolster you over the top. Because, like I say, these other teams, they're not playing around. They want to win the Stanley Cup as well. The one thing that we don't want to have happen, we don't want to have the Tampa Bay Lightning win another Stanley Cup. Give it a break already, Tampa Bay Lightning. Let someone else win it for a while. Jeez. Anyway, so we hope that what the Washington Capitals has in the lineup is enough. Where both forwards fit in the lineup, Johansson is the most versatile of the two acquisitions, as he carries skill to play with the top six forwards, but also capable of being a fit with depth players as well. His best performances after leaving Washington was during the Boston Bruins playoff run in 2019, where he recorded 4 goals and 7 assists in 22 games as the Bruins finished a win shy of the Stanley Cup. In his other 6 playoff contests with the Devils and Wild, he was held pointless. With TJ Oshie injured again, the Capitals envision him as a player able to slide into the top 6 role and carry the skills to play with the top line, but also able to help with the third line. So kind of a plug and play player. Where is he going to fit in? Time will only tell. But I think that Marcus Johansson is a Swiss Army knife, and he will fit wherever you need him. And that's what you need. You need someone that's going to be able to play the left wing, the right wing, or center, and Marcus Johansson offers that. So, and I think that the same thing is true with Johan Larsson as well. He's played different positions as well. And when you're a forward and you've been in the league this long, it's just kind of a necessity that you're going to have to play where they need you. If you're to this point of playing in the NHL and you've been around as long as both of them have, you can't, what are you going to tell your coach? I'm not going to play the left wing. I only play right wing. Then you're going to be warming the bench for a while or watching it from the press box. So I think that that's a thing of old, or maybe with younger players, that they say, I'm not going to play this position, or I'm not going to play it, or I don't want to. You do hear about that from time to time, but I think if you're wise and you want to have any longevity in the NHL, you gotta play all positions. Forward positions anyway. And I've even seen some rare cases where defensemen are forwards. I don't know. That might be pushing it a little bit, but I think that if you have a certain skill set that Marcus Johansson has or Johan Larsson has, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to play left wing or right wing, and then sometimes fill in at center if you have to. And I think that they have a history of playing those positions as well. So I think that the Capitals are going to be suited pretty well for their run for the playoffs. I hope that they can go all the way. That would make me so happy. And the Capitals really need to bring the cup back to Washington, D.C. It took them so long to get it. It just seems like wouldn't it be nice for that to happen again soon? So, all right, that is the Locked On Capitals podcast for today. This is the final episode of the week. There'll be a couple of games over the weekend. It will be the Sabres and the Devils, and I will be reporting on those games on Monday. Let's hope that they can pick up 2 more wins. These are must-win games for the Washington Capitals. You don't want to fall into that category. Oh, it was a trap game. We went into playing the Sabres, and we thought we were just going to be able to wipe the ice with them. It's not the case. Maybe you should see how they played the last couple games or see how they played against Toronto. Those teams would love nothing more than to play spoiler. Because guess what? The Capitals are in the playoff hunt. Sabres out. Devils out. There's no pressure on them anymore. There's zero pressure. They can just go out there and either play for new contracts with their present team or another team in the NHL. So the Capitals have got to be ready. They have a lot more at stake. So those are going to be some big games. And then Monday against Carolina, they're going to have all guns ablazing to take on the Carolina Hurricanes because they sit atop the Metro Division. And they bring that big physical game too. So I hope Wilson and Hathaway are all rested up because it's going to be a big one. All right. Now make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Host Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone help you become the expert of your fantasy league. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And I want to thank you again for joining me this week with Locked On Capitals. It's been fun so far, and I look forward to a lot more fun with the Washington Capitals, covering this team for you, bringing you a podcast on the Washington Capitals 5 days a week. Again, you can find us on Twitter. It's Locked On Caps. I'll keep you updated on all the news on the Washington Capitals. So whether there's a podcast going on or not, we've got you covered. All right. Thanks for watching.